Well, once again, Oscar Pistorius dominating all front pages of the newspapers this morning. He hasn't been there for a while, I have to admit. I think during his 30-day not recess, the court was on recess, but he was under mental evaluation for 30 days. You saw that he fell off the radar for a while. Not many people focusing in on the trial, but now, as of yesterday, back to court for Oscar Pistorius, and everybody now once again focusing in on that trial. And we saw two witnesses being called to the stand yesterday, and Chriselda Lewis was there. Now, she was watching the whole day, and let's find out from her what happened yesterday and, of course, what to expect today. Chriselda, very good morning to you again. Yesterday, how would you sum it up? What was the court case like?
Well, a very good morning to you once again, Leanne. Well, yesterday was the first time we saw Oscar Pistorius back at court after that 30-day evaluation. And certainly what everybody was interested in was getting some insight into what this report would say about Oscar Pistorius. What was his state of mind when he pulled that trigger, shooting and killing Reeva Steenkamp. So certainly yesterday, even though we didn't get a hard copy of this report to really dissect what it does say, all that we did get was that we heard Chriselda tell the court that basically this evaluation indicating that Oscar Pistorius knew very well what he was doing when he fired those four shots through the bathroom door of the Silverwoods estate home. And certainly bringing in the Dr. Farsfeld, who was a long-standing relationship with Oscar Pistorius. Really, you know, many people that we had spoken to here said that they might see a sympathy aspect coming into the Oscar Pistorius trial, and that Oscar Pistorius was told to take off his limbs and basically to take off his legs. And, you know, there was the first time that we really got to see emotion from Oscar Pistorius yesterday. He'd been very composed when he walked inside court, but of course every time that Oscar Pistorius needs to take off his legs, we've heard previously how he used to hide his legs every time he needed to take them off. So a little bit embarrassing. We saw his sister Amy Pistorius getting very emotional when he was asked to take off his legs, when we saw his Dr. Farsfeld demonstrate inside court, where Judge Thokozile Masipa and her two assessors had to come down from the bench as the doctor demonstrated how difficult it would be for Oscar Pistorius when he is on his stumps. And certainly, you know, the sound aspect as well, very important in this case, that previously we've heard the state witnesses, Dr. Stipp as well as Michelle Berger, talk about the women's screams that they heard coming from Oscar Pistorius' home on the morning that he shot and killed Reeva Steenkamp. So for a sound expert, a sound engineer, an acoustics engineer to be brought in at this time was to basically dispel what has been said all along, that he is supposed to tell the court that from 177 meters away, there's absolutely no way those state witnesses could have heard screams coming from the home of Oscar Pistorius. We know the defense has always maintained that those screams were not the screams of Reeva Steenkamp crying out for help, but in actual fact, Oscar Pistorius screaming for help after he had realized what he had done. So in a nutshell, that's what we heard in court yesterday, and we're expecting the cross-examination of Ivan Lynn, the acoustics engineer, to get underway this morning by State Prosecutor Chriselda.
Yeah, let's talk about the Ivan Lynn's testimony now and go into a little bit more detail about the sound analysis, because that I think a lot of people have been waiting for in hearing, because right in the beginning of the case we saw the whole comparison between Oscar's getting a high-pitched voice when he's screaming, and he sounds like a girl when he's screaming, and things like that. Is that going to be taken further? I imagine that it's a key part and key evidence for the defense.
You know, Leanne, this certainly, everyone has termed this last part, the last leg of the Oscar Pistorius trial. So very significant for the defense, and, you know, a last-minute ditch for Oscar Pistorius to prove to this court that what he did on that day was in fact a big mistake, that he did not intend to shoot and kill Reeva Steenkamp. So with the cross-examination of Ivan Lynn this morning, we're expecting Chriselda to try and tear in to his testimony. Already yesterday, it already started by asking Ivan Lynn whether he was best qualified qualified to speak on whether Oscar Pistorius, on his stumps, in a dangerous position, would not be able to defend himself, or he's very vulnerable when he's in a dangerous position. That's what Ivan Lynn testified to, saying that Oscar Pistorius on his stumps finds it very difficult to move, and particularly when he doesn't have a reference to light in a dark environment. He really cannot get his way around much without finding difficulty. But then we saw Gerrie Nel tearing into their testimony, saying that on the day that he shot and killed Reeva Steenkamp, we know that Oscar Pistorius' version is that he did not switch on the lights because he was too afraid to do so. But why is it then that Oscar Pistorius was able to do all these things, including bring a fan in from inside, go and get a cricket bat, go and get his gun because he thought he was in danger? And none of this in his version of events. Oscar Pistorius never mentioned stumbling, not once, over any of the items that were on the ground. You would also recall that one of the issues that has come into question, and another embarrassment for the police, is a missing electrical cord, where we saw Judge Thokozile Masipa yesterday order that the police officer or police officers who were in charge of the crime scene on the 14th of February and the 15th should submit an affidavit about what exactly happened inside the home of Oscar Pistorius on that day, because in the photographs, the crime scene photographs, at 1 minute you see an electrical cord, and the next you don't see it at all. So nobody knows what happened to this crucial piece of evidence, which really brings into question once again how police store crucial crime scene evidence. So another embarrassment for the police yesterday, and we saw Judge Thokozile Masipa really upset about this missing piece of evidence.
Was a big moment. I saw that. She focused on it for a very, very long time, just saying that she's very disturbed by the fact that evidence is missing, and that's, again, shining not such a good light on the police in terms of that one. Now, going back to how the day actually began yesterday, and everybody waiting on the results from the mental evaluation, and I know that you have spoken about that, but let's take another angle and let's look at, I suppose, these findings where it has said that Oscar Pistorius was in sound mind when that crime was committed. Do you think that this is, where's the thumbs up here, the state or the defense?
Look, all I can say at this stage, Leanne, is that certainly as a result of the psychiatric report saying that Oscar Pistorius was of sound mind when he pulled that trigger, that certainly means that Oscar Pistorius can be held criminally liable for the death of Reeva Steenkamp. What happens between now and then, certainly what would then need to happen is that the court, in whatever decision it does find, would need to take into account what this report is saying about Oscar Pistorius. Of course, there's no dispute that Oscar Pistorius did pull that trigger, but what the court needed to get out of its way was to rule out any aspect that Oscar Pistorius, as a result of the psychiatrist Meryl Foster's testimony, that Oscar Pistorius was not thinking well. There might have been a condition, the GAD, the general anxiety disorder, that might have contributed to the way that he reacted on that morning. Whether it plays good for the state or whether it plays good for the defense, certainly that remains to be seen. But what I can say at this stage is that it can certainly mean that Oscar Pistorius can be held criminally responsible for the death of Reeva Steenkamp. How that pans out, how the court chooses to use that, is certainly what will need to be seen at the later stage of the court, and certainly how many more witnesses, for example, the defense does try to bring to testify perhaps on Oscar Pistorius' condition, how he reacts. And certainly we've seen with the introduction of the doctor, the one who has the long-standing relationship with Oscar Pistorius, was brought in to talk about Oscar Pistorius and great difficulty that he's been experiencing as an amputee. Certainly maybe some of the other witnesses would be people who would bring another sympathy aspect to Oscar Pistorius and the hardships that he has been through for so many years, despite the major success that we've seen of Oscar Pistorius on the track.
Yeah, so basically the findings showing that he knew the difference between right and wrong at the time that the crime was committed, and that, I think, is a vital piece of evidence. Just in terms of seeing Oscar Pistorius, now this is the first time in 30 days that South Africans and the world has gotten to see him. What was your impression on seeing him? I mean, I saw him yesterday. I'm looking at the photographs. He's looking very tired, very pale. We saw him break down again in court. That's my interpretation. You, of course, seeing him in the flesh. What was it like? What's he looking like to you? How's he holding up?
Well, Leanne, I'm really in quite a fortunate position on this this massive scaffolding that the SABC has put up for us to broadcast here. And every time Oscar Pistorius arrives, I'm really able to get a glimpse of him as he gets out of the vehicle. Yesterday, when he jumped out of the vehicle, he sort of stumbled just a little bit, tried to fix his socks, and really tried to compose himself. And when I did get a look at him, he looked very composed. And every time he walks past the media, certainly, I mean, all the landsmen are there, so you really want to give your best side when you're walking past all the media who are here to continue covering this trial. But very composed as he walked in, but when he was instructed again to take off his limbs, to take off his legs, Oscar Pistorius looks very embarrassed, even though from the gallery we're not really able to see what what he looks like when he's on his stumps. But a look of embarrassment on his face. And I mean, we've heard that, as I've said, Leanne, inside court, that every time he needed to take off his prosthetics and put them on the side to either adjust or to put on some socks or some stuff to protect himself before he puts on his prosthetics, a look of embarrassment on Oscar Pistorius' face. And certainly the picture that you paint of a pale face is something that we really got to see. I mean, it may have been an adjournment or a postponement for 30 days for the rest of us to get some rest, but certainly it wasn't for Oscar Pistorius, who we understand only completed his last session with the independent panel of doctors on the 20th of June. So it had really been, I'm sure, a draining period for Oscar Pistorius to prove that the nightmares that he had previously said he had been getting after realizing what he had done was to show doctors that what he did was a terrible mistake, and certainly he's not been normal. He's not been the same Oscar Pistorius after the day that he pulled that trigger. So certainly very pale. We'll continue, of course, to monitor his emotions, as we continue on day 2 after that 30-day evaluation to see how Oscar Pistorius holds up as the trial continues.
Yeah, I mean, one can only imagine what he's going through, and never mind him. Let's look at his family, and then let's look at Reeva's family, because, we've seen June Steenkamp sitting there throughout the trial, being there representing her daughter and obviously trying to find closure in and amongst all the sadness that she's found herself in. And then, of course, the family of Oscar Pistorius. Now, they're constantly behind him. We're always seeing his sister there, his brother also present, and his uncle. However, today, and I'm not sure, Chriselda, if you've managed to get your hands on a copy of some of the newspapers, a lot of them talking about Oscar's father and him being missing from this trial, not being there present, even though Oscar has said his relations with his dad, Henk, is not very good. But they're also talking about the fact that he was dating former Miss World Annelien Kriel, and perhaps analysing the behaviour, his patterns between him and Oscar, holding on to Annelien quite tightly, showing his domineering character, also his obsession with guns. So his family really under the spotlight. Let's take a moment to talk about the affected families from both Reeva and the Pistoriuses.
Well, Leanne, I've been monitoring the families, of Oscar Pistorius and some of the friends, of Reeva Steenkamp as well, who've really been here. We've seen the Myers family on the side here supporting the Steenkamp family. We've seen June Steenkamp. And, the look on June Steenkamp's face never seems to change. You can certainly see, the face of a woman who is really deeply scarred by what has happened to her daughter. As expected, that would be the reaction of any mother. But we never see any tears coming from June Steenkamp. Certainly some would say you'd never be able to understand what June Steenkamp is going through inside with the number of interviews that she has done with the international media, you can really sense some anger in some of the comments that are reported on that she's made towards Oscar Pistorius and the loss of her daughter, Reeva Steenkamp. But, you know, it's very difficult when the family does not want to speak at this point. We did do that one interview with Reeva's cousin from Cape Town, who's been away for the trial, from the trial. We saw her husband back here yesterday, Kim Martin's husband, who was back in court yesterday. And it must be quite difficult as well for these families to commute from Cape Town to keep on coming to show support for June Steenkamp here. We know that Reeva's father has not been here. He's been of ill health, and the family has always said that they find it would be in his best interest to stay away from the limelight and, you know, all the tenseness inside the court, and for him to rather remain in the Eastern Cape where he would be able to recover from there. But with regard to Oscar Pistorius' family, we've seen a family that's been 100% behind Oscar Pistorius. You know, every time Oscar Pistorius had broken down just before we had gone to the postponement, a family that has been sharing very much Oscar Pistorius's pain. Every time Oscar Pistorius breaks down, you'd find many of the family members also breaking down, and some of them looking towards the floor and not really wanting to show emotion. During ad breaks, they would come outside into the passage and hug each other, and those are the scenes that we've really seen play out. But it would certainly be a family here that will continue to be in the spotlight, whether it's going to be a Carl Pistorius, whether it's going to be Amy Pistorius. Certainly what the family does, what the family has been doing, whether it's past relationships or what the family has been involved in, they'll certainly come under the spotlight, because we've got a mega superstar here who, by the looks of things inside court, certainly what has come out from inside court, someone who has lived a life of glitz and glamour and has all the money in the world. But certainly there was something wrong, according to the testimony, of course, that has come on from inside court. Some of the witnesses saying that Oscar Pistorius is a totally different personality that has never been shown to the public out there. It was all a farce that was put up in front of the world's media every time he attended events. We saw SMSs between him and Reeva Steenkamp that have painted a picture of an obsessive, jealous boyfriend. So certainly Oscar Pistorius' family, his friends, we'd know that his friends were also interviewed during this 30-day evaluation. So certainly everything around, behind, in front of Oscar Pistorius will continue to take center stage and will always be under the spotlight, and certainly not only now but until the end of this trial, and certainly even after.
All right, Chriselda Lewis, thank you for giving us a very comprehensive update.